You're listening to the Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and back, thank goodness, from the wilderness, Joe Dilworth. Joe, how are you, man?
I am great. How are you?
Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy New Year. We are in a brand new year, a brave new world, if you would. And no, it's good. It's good to be back. It was nice to have a break because not only did I take a break from the podcast, which I did sorely miss, but took a break from work. And there were periods of time during that break where I took a much needed respite from the internet and kind of unplugged, put the phone away, and did stuff around the house.
That's nice.
And
That's
more
really
things
good.
that mattered.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
well, you need that. I think people should step away. I certainly didn't mind taking some time off for the holidays. I mean, it's funny. I did miss doing the show, and although with all the stuff that's going on in the world, it sort of seems like, oh, now we got to do a podcast too. It sort of feels weird, but it's okay.
Yeah,
I want to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's great, and I think it's okay to talk about other things besides what's happening in the country and in the world, because people do need a slight respite. Although we've started talking about it already, but I'm glad you're able to come back, and it's okay to say Happy New Year, even though it's the second week of January technically. But it's all good.
I feel if we say Happy New Year enough times,
It'll come true.
It will actually work. Yes. So
Yeah.
no, I think we're
like if you
still,
say Candyman 3 times or something. But wait, no,
yes,
it's a terrible.
or Red Rum or Bloody
Mary. Is that what it was?
Maria.
Bloody Maria.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bloody Mary. I don't know.
Well,
Whatever.
you talked about it.
Bloody Marys sound nice.
They do. You were talking about mirrors and reflections as we were pre-showing this thing, and so I was thinking about Candyman for some reason, because you look in the mirror and you say his name and then he appears. Right? That's how it works.
They're remaking that, aren't they?
I think they already did remake it, but it hasn't been released because of COVID. So I like the original. It scared me. Tony Todd, after I met him, I was like, wow, he's not scary at all. He's a super nice dude, and it was just that movie kind of freaked me out. I don't know. I think it was because of the flies. I don't like flies. Maybe
No, I'm not a big.
a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Snakes didn't bother me because snakes don't bother me. But for some reason, flying bugs are something I don't like. So
No, the snakes didn't bother me, but when we got to Temple of Doom and there was all those bugs, I was like, I'm having a hard time. Maybe that's why I don't like that movie, because
it's not the beating of the children or anything.
No,
Well, that's fine. I'm fine with abusing kids, but the bugs were terrible.
that's a line too far.
It's a line too far. And just for the record, I'm not fine with abusing kids. There, I just have to say.
No, not at all.
In our
We're being sarcastic.
I am being sarcastic. In the current climate or whatever, you have to be clear about what you're saying. So I
guess you really do. I mean,
I don't advocate for children being abused. So
words matter. I mean, somebody,
They do.
10 years from now, when we go to our movie premiere and get our lucrative TV series contract, people are going to go, they said on this podcast 10 years ago that they're okay with beating children, and then we'll be canceled and fired.
I don't know if I'm going to be around in 10 years, but that's a great thought. Thank you.
Oh, yes, you will.
Thank you for your optimism. I appreciate that. So, it's doubly optimistic that I'll be alive in 10 years, and also that I'll have some kind of lucrative TV deal. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what will TV be in 10 years? Will it even be TV? That's an interesting question.
It's not really even TV now, but...
yeah, because you don't... I mean, is it TV because you watched it on a TV, and now it's... What is it if it's just media or something, right? You're just consuming media on your tablet or on your phone or whatever. So is it television anymore? Just like, what's a movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still differentiate. So I still call movies, film or movies or whatever. But film is weird because most things aren't shot on film anymore. But I look at... I don't call TV shows. I call them series, or extended series or, long form series, because that's really what they are. I mean, they're not broadcast TV shows anymore. I know we'd still have the broadcast networks, but even they aren't adhering to any kind of like seasonal things anymore. So it's just their series, and there's short form films, I guess, or movies. I don't know what to call movies anymore.
Well, yeah, because is it a movie if it's made just for Netflix and then Netflix is the only place it ever plays? I think it's still a movie.
Right.
I think that excuse me. I think that the format is what sort of defines it, because, like you said, a series is episodic, right? So you
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
10, 60-minute episodes of something. That's a series, or that's TV to me. And then you watch a movie, which is 90 minutes, 100 minutes, 120 minutes, whatever. Even if it's on
Right.
Netflix, it's the 3 act structure or whatever. And that's what a movie is to me. So that's how I
Yeah.
define it. But I don't know if the medium on which you watch it makes as much difference. I'm not Christopher Nolan. I don't necessarily. Although I would
Boy, that
I
guy.
would have liked
I
to have
tell
seen
you.
Tenet on the big screen. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that the movie
We
suffered
can,
because I couldn't watch it like that.
so we could segue right now into talking about Tenet, if you don't mind,
No,
because
Tenet's fine. That was something I was going to talk about. Well, we're talking about. Gosh darn it, we're talking about
our favorite.
Warner Brothers. I want to talk about that with you about how Warner Brothers is doing the releasing everything on HBO Max, but that bears on that because it was a Warner Brothers film that he insisted on
Yes.
having in the theater. So yeah, go off. Go ahead.
Well, so a couple things. I think first of all, Tenet kind of proved that Warner Brothers' choice to release things theatrically and streaming at the same time is kind of warranted, because I think Tenet did terrible in at the theater, and rightly so, because people weren't going and probably shouldn't have gone with COVID going on, right? So I think that kind of justifies, because I think we talked about this before. You're not going to leave a multi-million-dollar blockbuster movie sitting on the shelf for too long. I mean, I think they've kind of gone too long with Bond at this point. It should have been just released to streaming or released in some capacity by now. I mean, we're coming up on a year past its original release date. That's kind of crazy. But besides that, I gotta ask for Tenet, what the hell was going on with the sound design on that movie? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. It's I,
so
I'm
I'll admit I
sure there was
watched
a,
it
I'm sure
for
there was a plan. I'm sure Christopher Nolan had a plan, but I'm sure part of it was you have to watch it in a theater because of the sound, because you're not going to get the same audio experience at home that you're going to get in the theater. So that was probably part of it.
and
But
and that's
also,
true, because the first time I watched it was on my computer with headphones,
yeah,
and the headphones automatically pipe in the dialogue much better.
yeah,
When I watched it with my wife and son on my TV with my sound system, it was, you could not understand the dialogue, because the sound, not only was the sound design, the music and the sound background sounds too loud, but they were in tones that I can't speak in sound correctly, but like either a decibel or a tone that kind of blot out the dialogue, so you couldn't really understand what was being said, and that was weird.
yeah.
So it's
I have
just
a pretty good surround system, and yeah, it was a challenge in some scenes to figure out what people were saying. But again, I think
yeah.
that's by design. I think partially it's to be unsettling, maybe if I can put my whatever
Yeah.
my brain into Christopher Nolan's brain. I think he did it on purpose in some ways because it's a movie about time and things being distorted and whatever, and you don't necessarily hear people that well. I mean, that was a thing that Robert Altman was a big fan of too. I don't know if you ever watched too many Robert Altman films, but he
Yes.
always like, oh, that's real life. You don't always hear what people are saying. You catch fragments of conversations. You're at a party or whatever, and you don't necessarily hear everybody. And I was like, well, that's great, except if you want to hear the dialogue, it's kind of annoying. So, but I think Nolan is more of a show don't tell kind of guy. So he wants the visuals maybe to stand for themselves, and you don't necessarily need to know what people are talking about because a lot of it's nonsense. Let's be honest. It was not.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
not. I don't think it was his strongest movie. I'm a fan of
Well.
his movies, but
mm,
I didn't
yeah.
love the thing, and it was just. I think it was needlessly convoluted in some ways. So I don't know if the dialogue would have made any difference. Honestly,
I did love it.
you
Yeah,
did
I'll
really?
say that.
Wow.
And I've watched it about 3 times now, and it's, yeah, I quite liked it. I definitely loved it, and I thought,
Interesting.
here's the funny thing. The first time I watched it, I'm like, the lead guy. I'm like, his voice sounds really familiar. What the hell else has he's been in?
Who's
This
he
is
related?
bugging me.
Who's he related
And then
to?
I finally looked it up, and I'm like, oh,
Oh,
he's Denzel's kid. That
yeah.
makes sense,
Well,
because
I
he
thought yeah,
sounded just like him and moved like him too.
he
It was
did a great
crazy.
job. By the way, I liked him a lot, and I
Yeah,
liked Robert Pattinson a lot too. I thought he did great too. I think I'm so, and I know we've talked about this before. I'm really happy that he's been able to break out of the whole Twilight thing, and
yes,
it's cool. I'm glad that he has, and I think that he's got a lot more to offer as an actor than being a sparkly vampire. So good for him. And
Yeah, no, he's a really really good actor and
actually,
really interesting to watch. So
I
this
think
was
he
good.
gets a lot of good performances. I thought that what's his face, the bad guy was miscast though. I didn't like
Oh,
him.
Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, he didn't. He's not.
He,
He didn't do it for me.
you know that if I had to pick a weak part of the movie for me, it would be him because uh, Branagh just I don't know what it is about him, but I'll say this: I find him a much better director than actor,
Yeah. Well.
and I don't know if it's just that I dislike. I mean, there's certain actors like Seth Rogen and a couple others that I just can't stand them, and I can't put my thumb on why. And I think it's the same. I got to lump Kenneth Branagh in there as well. I think the other part of it too was
Wait.
he
You don't
was
like Seth Rogen, really?
no,
Really?
no, I can't stand him.
That's interesting. He's an actor or as
I
a
will.
person?
Um, I have no idea what he's like as a person, but as an actor, I can't watch
Interesting.
a movie he's in. I
Interesting.
just can't do it.
Okay, sorry. I didn't. I
Um,
was just had to get
no,
a clarification on that one. Interesting. How do you feel about it?
but
How do you feel about his sculpture, his pottery, though? It's amazing, right? Anyway, go ahead.
I've
Sorry.
not seen it.
Go
I
ahead.
don't know. But I think Branagh that the negative for me, other than Branagh being in that role, is that character is wow, just evil, and it makes me kind of scared how well Branagh sold that. It's like, geez, I expected like articles coming out like, yeah, Branagh's really a woman beater and a child hater in real life because he sold it well. But again, he's an actor I just don't like. Um,
Yeah.
so that was probably the negative part of me. But I don't know. I really liked it, and I liked the whole sending things back from the future. Blah blah blah. I don't want to say too much about it because I think people should go in, much like any other Nolan movie. I think people should go in knowing nothing about it. His movies are kind of like to me like The Matrix, where you should go in not knowing anything and then probably watch it another 5 times so you can try to figure out what's going
Well,
on.
I probably should
But
watch it again, but no one can tell you what the Matrix is. Oh, sorry.
right.
Hey.
I mean, his Batman movies are probably his most straightforward movies. Although Interstellar was fairly
Yeah, I like
straightforward.
Interstellar, but obviously everybody complains about the third act, and we've talked about Interstellar a lot on the show, but
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what put me off on Tenet. I was probably just came into it with like, this is something that people were like, oh, you have to see it in the theater, you have to do this, and maybe that colored my perception of it, and I don't know. It's a great looking movie. It's got a lot of good action, and the actors are pretty much all really good except for Branagh, as we talked about. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was just off putting to me, but I've only watched it twice, so I don't know. Maybe I got to watch it again. And sometimes things grow on me. Like I don't like something the first time I watch it, or it doesn't really resonate with me. But then if I watch it, like Scott Pilgrim, I use that as an example. I didn't love Scott Pilgrim when I first watched it. I saw it in the theater with Matt Robb, actually, strangely enough. And
And it grew on you though.
now I've watched it 100 times. Yeah, I love the movie now. It's just
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
didn't maybe I didn't get it, or maybe I was in the wrong frame of mind or whatever, and it didn't click for me. But now I love the movie. I think it's amazing, and maybe I'll feel that way about Tenet, and maybe I won't. But I'll definitely give it another try because I think Christopher Nolan, in spite of his insistence on some things and his sort of steadfast, you have to watch this and film. Although I appreciate film, I still think he's somebody who should be given the benefit of the doubt.
Yes. No, I think he puts together really great movies. I think even the movies people like you're saying Tenet was like meh. I still think it's a well put together movie. Well, he gets great performances out of
Oh
actors.
yeah, definitely.
Um, he likes to take us down really interesting rabbit holes and mazes. And I think they're movies that are not for everybody, and it's okay. We've discussed discussed this before. It's really okay to say you don't like something or it was okay and go on. There doesn't need to be. And I know we're doing a podcast talking about the things we like, but even to that extent, it's not. I'm not going to post the same feelings or thoughts about Tenet, every single day and tell people they're wrong if they don't think it. Same thing if you hate something or you don't like it, move on. I guess I still bristle at people going, you know, that that movie ruined my life, or I hated that movie and were so angry at the movie. I'm like, how the hell do you get angry at a movie? I have
Well,
a real
yeah,
hard time with that.
people do, but people take it personally and they take it into themselves, and it means a lot to them. They have passion. They're passionate fans, and that's part of the reason things become successful. I think because of passionate fans and people who go
Yeah.
repeat viewings, and they really, really care about stuff, and they really want to fight about it. I just think sometimes people just want to fight about something, and it's an easy thing to fight about because
Yeah.
you don't like this movie or you don't like this show or this whatever, or Han shot first, or Mac versus PC or whatever. It's just like people like to stir shit up sometimes, and so
Right.
that's part of it. But yeah, we're doing a show about how pop culture stuff and the stuff we like, but there's also room for some debate about what the various merits of these things are. But I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for liking something, obviously, and you're not going to tell me I'm wrong for not liking something. I try to see things with an open mind. I try to see things thinking, well, I'm going to take this in, which is why I hate knowing anything going into anything. If I can help it, I try not to know anything about anything. But I know kind of
Right.
what to expect with a Nolan film. It's going to be this, or it's going to be that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I went into it with that, and yet it left me sort of, I don't know, empty or whatever. It didn't
Well,
spark joy.
if the
So
first one or two Nolan movies I saw that I were like, yeah, that's definitely, he doesn't put movies together or make movies that I like, I probably wouldn't. I mean, there's directors that are highly acclaimed that I just like, yeah, you know, I don't care, but I'm not going to go off about how what they do is an affront to humanity. I mean,
well, you're
yet
not a
if they
psycho.
do things I like, I'm going to be like, hey, this is really great, and this is why I liked it. You should go see it,
Yeah,
and that's about it, right?
yeah,
So, you know,
I agree. So talking about Tenet sort of leads to one of the other topics I wanted to get
yeah,
into, and I talked about this with Rick on the last episode that dropped. But as you know, Warner Brothers is releasing all of their stuff on HBO Max and not in the theaters necessarily. Although there's some discussion with Legendary, who's done a couple of their films, like, and they want to make sure that some things. So there's going to be maybe some day and date theatrical releases in addition to
right.
HBO Max. So, but what do you think about them doing this? I mean, all in. Do you think it's a good move, or do you think it's weird, or I don't know?
I think well, it's definitely weird, and
Yeah,
it's, I hate to throw around the term unprecedented, but it really is. But again, when we've had maybe not necessarily COVID times or times when it was difficult to get people to go to the theaters, these kind of outlets, maybe Netflix did, but these kind of outlets didn't exist at the time, so it's certainly unprecedented. But as I said earlier, you can't, from a business perspective, you can't leave a multi-million-dollar movie sitting there doing nothing. I mean, it's
yeah.
just, it's bad because then you won't generate the money to make the next, however many movies you want to make. So, yeah, I mean, we've discussed this before. Hollywood, quote unquote, or movie making or TV making is at the end of the day and at its core a business. I mean, it's there to make money, and the money that you make enables you to keep going, much like any business, and invest in the things in the future that are going to keep you going. So it is a business. So certainly from a business perspective, I think they absolutely have to do this. And I would say that a lot of other studios, especially if what's going on in the world continues for an extended period of time past this year, are going to be watching to see how successful or not successful it is. And so, yeah, I think they kind of have to do it. I'm okay with it because then it gives me the ability to see movies I probably wouldn't have been able to see, or at least see for a long period of time, because I'm not going to a movie theater this year. I'm just not. So I'm happy that I'll have the ability to see movies when they're released in the comfort of my own home. So I kind of get, having managed a theater long time ago. I kind of get where the exhibitors, if you will, are coming from, and they're kind of not being happy about it. Honestly, a blockbuster movie that was exclusive to theaters would be a huge draw to get people back to theaters once that's safe to do. So I don't think that's off the table. But yeah, I just, as I said, I guess in the pre-show, James Bond, that movie's been sitting on the shelf almost a year past its original release date, and I want to see it. I'm not going to go to the theater to see it, but if they also release it on streaming, I'll absolutely watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm kind of surprised, I suppose, that they are releasing in theater and then on streaming for free. I was kind of thinking that for like new movies for like a period of time, they would do the Mulan model where they charge you extra for it, or you could buy it and own it, kind of thing. But I'm not the penny pincher at Warner Brothers, so I don't know.
Well, I mean,
how that works into
as I pointed out in the last episode with Rick, that and other people have pointed out in reports and whatever about this whole thing, is that AT&T owns Warner Brothers, and so maybe AT&T doesn't care so much about if the artistic merits of their thing or the making the extra cash. They're just got all these assets sitting on their balance sheet that they need to unload, or whatever you want to call it. So they're not going to worry about it so much. I mean, they're also trying to drive subscribers to HBO Max too. So that's part of it as well. They need to make their money. They need to make their money on HBO Max. So that's part of the strategy. But the idea that their entire slate is dropping was just sort of amazing to me, and also why I don't really think Disney's going to do that, or any other giant conglomerate. They're just not going to have to, or they'll do it like they did with Mulan, where they're going to charge extra for it because they'll charge extra for everything. And also they've got Mandalorian, they've got Mandalorian Part 2 or Season 4 or whatever we're into now.
They've got the Marvel series.
They got the Marvel series. They've got Boba Fett, Bounty Hunter running Jabba the Hutt's gang or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
The Tale of Fett, which is awesome, by the way. I'm so happy about that. But so yeah, they it's a different business strategy for sure than other studios probably. But there are some companies like Legendary Entertainment who were fighting against it or were upset about it. Like for their movie King Kong versus Godzilla, they were still in litigation about it, or maybe not litigation, but negotiation.
Sounds like they've reached a deal now.
Yeah.
As of this recording.
Yeah, exactly. But there's still, I mean, the Dune director, he still wants his movie to come out in theaters, and it still has a theatrical date, I think, in October. So
I'm kind of again, speaking of Christopher Nolan, he's like, HBO Max is the worst streaming service in the history of mankind. I mean, it's like, and I guess Villeneuve is doing the same thing. It's
One day you and I are going to figure out how to pronounce people's names.
I know. It's like, it's just a horrid thing. And I'm like, okay, that's maybe going a little too far.
You know what? If you're an artist, though, I can understand that. He's a filmmaker who thinks of film as an art. So you want your art displayed in the way that you intended to have it displayed. And if it's not being displayed that way, of course you're going to be upset about it. And of course you're going to disparage the delivery method or whatever. But he wants people to experience it the way it was intended. It's like painting a portrait or painting a picture and then looking at a photo of it on your phone. It's not the same thing, right? As being in the room looking at the painting, or not. So if you believe film is art, then fine. If you don't, if it's just commerce to you, I'm not talking about you. I'm saying in general, then maybe it doesn't matter to you. But if it matters to him, and it's his movie, so if he's not going to advocate for his own movie, who will, right? So he has to.
Well,
I want to see. I want to see Dune in the theater. I want to see all these movies in the theater because
I would love to, yes.
But we're not going to be able to do that, obviously. So I guess the question is it worth waiting until you can? Or is it something that should just be, for our convenience? If taking the business perspective out of it, is it better to wait? I mean, I'm fine with waiting. If it takes another year, I'm okay with that. But
well, it's kind of, it's interesting you said it's his movie and it should be seen the way he wants.
It is.
It's not really. It's also Warner Brothers' movie.
Well, you know what I'm saying, though. I mean, people.
I know, but
we're talking about art versus commerce, right? So in the sort of parlance of Hollywood, it's a Denis Villeneuve film, right?
Yes.
So it's his movie. He's the director and producer and whatever. It's his baby, and now he wants to have his baby shown at the gender reveal party the way he wants to have it shown, right? So
it's just the whole, film is the only way. Digital is terrible. Streaming services are, a scourge to mankind speaks to me of like, well, you kids in your newspapers, I can't believe, it's like, come on, dude. I mean,
Well, they said this. They said
there's
the same thing about TV. TV is a wasteland, right, or whatever.
right.
It's
It's
like,
like
yeah,
there are, much like in the world of, paintings, there are many ways, many types of paints and many ways to paint, and being the only one that's doing it your way and saying this is the true form. It's like, true Star Trek fans, it's like, Nolan, calm yourself. It's okay. So
yeah.
I mean, sure, be like, hey, I constructed this film this way, and this is the way I would like it to be seen. That's fine. But to say everybody else that's doing it a different way, it doesn't know or talentless and don't know what they're doing, is not going to win you any favors. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
like,
yeah, it's how you deliver your message counts too. It's how you say
yeah,
things for sure. So, well, he's passionate, right? He's a passionate filmmaker,
sure,
and
sure,
he believes in the auteur theory, I'm sure. So,
right.
it's his like I said, it's his baby, and he wants his baby to be taken care
But
of. So,
yeah,
but
I'm
I think that he'll get his way. Honestly, I think that he will get his theatrical release, and maybe it will be
yes,
simultaneous with HBO Max, like they did with Wonder Woman, which we could talk about in a second. But
sure.
I know you're a big Patty Jenkins fan, so I'm curious to hear what you thought of the movie. But I think that there's room for all of it. There's room for the artsy whatever quote unquote stuff, and it's going to come to the theater, and there's room for dropping stuff on HBO Max. There's room for everything. There's room for everybody. So, but if you got a $250 million blockbuster or $250 million potential blockbuster, then it behooves you to get it out to as many eyeballs as possible where you can get revenue if you're a business. So it makes total sense. And also, you've got this streaming platform you're trying to drive traffic to. You need to make sure
Yeah,
that people are actually interested in the product you have. You're not Disney, right? Like we said, you don't have all these great shows coming up. You don't have all the Marvel stuff. You don't have Star Wars, for God's sake. So
right.
you got to do something. So
You got to think that I wonder if there's a number or maybe all of these movies that have already been like written off as a loss. And maybe there's only, I mean, if you're a company like Warner Brothers, there may be a significant number of them that you can write off as a loss and still continue. But maybe like Legendary, they're like, we got to make our money back on this. We can't,
well, I'm sure, yeah, they need to stay in
just
business.
take it
Yeah.
as a wash. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole, I'm sure
Well, that's a discussion. That's a business discussion about how
yeah, there's
Hollywood works
teams of
again.
people that figure all that out,
Yeah.
and that's a world I could never live in or understand. But
Well, I don't know that Legendary is on the hook for the entire production budget. I'm sure it's a shared kind of
well,
situation. And
yeah,
Warner Brothers, being the distributor, also picked up a lion's share of the cost. I mean, I don't know. I'm not privy to the deal points. I have no idea. But in general, I would feel like yes, they stand to take a significant financial hit if they can't write all of it off.
yeah,
But you don't want to keep writing stuff off either. It's kind of hard to be in the negative forever.
yeah,
Although
and
people do it, companies do it all the time. So I don't know.
that's true. I mean, bottom line, many of these movies, if not all of them, are movies that I absolutely want to see in the theater, but that's not going to be possible. So I'm happy that I'm going to be able to see these movies.
Exactly. So speaking of that, so what did you think of Wonder Woman 1984?
I'm not. There's some very, very passionate things going on about that movie in the Twitterverse and in social media, and I'm like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. It's not something I'm going to be clamoring to watch again. I probably will watch it again at some point. I hate to be that guy because I always rail against him, but despite its problems, I found it enjoyable.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, it seemed. I don't know. I agree with you. I think it was just if something felt off. Like Wonder Woman felt like more of a singular kind of vision. I hate to use that word, but someone was actually in the driver's seat of Wonder Woman a little bit more, and it felt more cohesive, certainly. And it also had, I think, it was much better written.
Yes.
This one felt like more of a let's throw shit against the wall and see what sticks, or more of like we got to please everybody kind of situation. And
I guess the biggest thing for me was there was no reason at all story wise or any other reason for it to take place in 1984. So I didn't understand that thinking
Fanny
about it.
packs. That's why.
I guess. I mean, if you know, again, I would have rather have seen a Wonder Woman movie set like in World War II. Um, and maybe that or like present day. I didn't understand why it needed to take place in 1984, but you know, that's
Well, I
again,
thought it
why
was
does
gonna.
any
Yeah,
movie need to take place?
when
You
I
know,
first saw it, I was
any
like, oh,
time.
it's gonna be like Thor Ragnarok. That's cool. They're gonna try to
Right.
do. They're gonna try to like make it funky or whatever. And I was like, oh, great. But yeah, I agree with you. Why did it have to be 1984? Except for the fact that that was, if you're trying to do some sort of thinly veiled attack on people like Trump or whatever. It's like you have this guy
Yeah.
who's sort of
Yeah.
Trumpian, I guess, or whatever, and you
Sure.
can't set it in present day and attack him, but you can do it. And I'm not saying that they had a political agenda in the movie. I feel like there was some of a political agenda, but not to mention, there was a lot of things that I felt were really sort of misplaced. There was a lot of, the stuff in the Middle East. It was very, I don't know. There was a lot of, again, I really think it was just here. How can we have this whole thing that fits a lot of boxes and checks off a lot of boxes,
Yeah.
and it didn't do any of them particularly well, and so, but
Yeah.
Gal
Some of the
Gadot
choices
is
were
easy to look at. I guess that matters. Right? So,
well. Some of the choices were odd, and I think if they had maybe it felt like maybe they rushed on it. If they had rethought some things or thought some things through, it could have worked better. Like you have this wishing stone that makes people's wishes come true out of whole cloth. Why did Steve Trevor have to inhabit another guy's body and basically have imply that Diana kind of raped the guy, right? Because
you can't rape the willing. Oh wait, sorry, that's a terrible thing to say.
well, but he wasn't.
No, I know.
So that part was like, I'm like, why would they just not have Steve Trevor magically back?
Well, yeah,
as
why can't it
himself?
just provide a new body, right?
Right. That part I really
Because it
did
wouldn't have
not
made any difference,
understand.
right? And you could have had him easily
No.
come back, and then she could have. I mean, spoilers, I
She
guess.
could have still made the same choice.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I don't know because I think that and Patty Jenkins actually is been asked about this, and she said, "Well, I remember it's like the body swap comedies of the '80s," and I'm like, "Well, that's great. That was the '80s, but I don't know that you should do that now." And
Well, except they didn't portray it as that really.
No,
I mean,
no.
they kind of tried to do that, but not really.
Well, that's
So,
that's why I wonder if either she had more control over this one or less control over this one, because I kind of think that at the first one, people are like, "Oh, Wonder Woman, yeah, we kind of need that movie too, so you go ahead and make it. We're not gonna."
well, two other guys wrote the story basically, and then she worked on the script with them, Jeff Johns and Dave Callahan.
Yeah.
So that I think, and it's based on a story by Johns and Jenkins. Jeff Johns is kind of weird because he's a comic book. He started out as a comic book writer,
sure.
and I've loved the comic books he writes. I like his story style and what he does with characters, but kind of across the board, everything that he's written or co-written for film and TV doesn't work for me and kind of falls flat, this included. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if if maybe in the comics he has complete control and does it the way he wants, but then like in the movie and TV world, he's kind of beholden to the studio and executives and things like that. But for some reason, his story structures and the stuff he writes in movies and TV just falls really flat for me. This included. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of really good stuff in it I liked, but overall, I mean, I don't hate it with the heat of 1,000 suns. And like I said, it was like, well, I don't feel like I wasted 2.5 hours. And I thought it was okay. Kristen Wiig did fantastic, as she always does. And
I know
it was
but the whole trope of she's not beautiful because she has glasses, and then when she takes her glasses
well, yeah,
off,
that too. It was like, what?
Well, that's another '80s.
I mean,
that's another '80s trope. I think what they were trying to do is make fun of '80s movies, maybe, and so, but it fell flat. It didn't work, and it wasn't explained. I really think, and this is just my personal theory, obviously, but I really think that what happened is the first movie was she was basically left alone because they had to have a Wonder Woman anyway, and not as many people were involved, and it became a huge hit, right? So in the second one,
Right.
there's a lot more expectations, a lot more people want to have opinions and want to have hands in it, and I think that this was a movie made by more of a committee. I don't really think that she had total control over the movie, or anybody did really. I think it was a lot of let's do this. Oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this. I hope so anyway. Otherwise, if it was all her, I'm a little concerned about Rogue Squadron or her next Star Wars movie. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked Patty Jenkins, and yeah, the first Wonder Woman movie, she had no story input. She directed it, and maybe she did as the movie progressed.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that she is the negative part of
Oh, and neither am I. Neither am I.
think so. I'm kind of hoping that because I guess they're fast tracking Wonder Woman 3 because it performed well enough for them. It would be interesting to see if they are like, hey, Patty, just go make your movie. And maybe that was kind of part of the agreement for, yeah, I'll do your sequel, and we'll do it the way you want. But if there's a third one, I want to do it myself because I would love to see her in complete control and see what she does with it.
Right.
I think she's got the character down, and I think she does great bringing out performances. I mean, the chemistry between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot is pretty outstanding, and I thought their scenes together were the highlight of the movie. Especially Pine, being the World War I pilot and getting to see all this new stuff and fly a new plane was like just the way
a new plane that's at a museum that's totally fueled and ready to fly. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
I know, but seeing, I mean,
But it's a superhero movie.
Again,
so
it's a fictional movie.
Logic comes out. Yeah, I know. But still,
the look on his face and his delivery was
he's great.
Was the highlight of the movie.
I can't imagine they're trying to bring him back for the third one, though, right? I mean, that seems pretty ridiculous.
Unless they actually bring him back. And to me, I was like, as soon as he got brought back as a wish in this one, I'm like, well, he's going to go away again. And then I'm like, so what was the whole point of bringing him back? Because, or maybe it was her getting closure. I don't know.
So she can learn. So she can learn to let go.
But that even seemed kind of muddled because then it was going too far in the direction of she can't function without a man, right?
Well, I think she was going through a journey, man, and she just realized, hey, I don't need a man to define me. I can go and be my own hero.
Yeah, but for this character that's been around for centuries, she's been, excuse the pun, she's been pining for.
I see what you did there. Clever.
For 70 years over this one guy. And I mean, obviously, they portray him as the love of her life, but I'm like, really? And then, so.
Well, the idea that she would be alone is,
yeah.
But you know what? It happens, though. I imagine maybe you just never been in love, Joe. Maybe that's what it is. You just don't get it.
I am.
You're just a cynic.
I am. Maybe. But yeah, I get what they're going for, and I just don't think that they
didn't get there.
They didn't hit it, and they didn't land, stick the landing, as they say. And you don't every time. You don't with every movie.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, I don't feel like I wasted my time. I liked it enough and it was kind of really interesting to see Pedro Pascal go from Mando to just absolutely chewing the scenery in every scene he was in. It was like, wow, he's just going for it.
Yeah,
so
Pedro, go off,
cool.
Man. Do what you got to do. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I mean,
I liked him. I liked a lot of the stuff. I mean, I would say I enjoyed. Everybody talks about, oh, you could cut a half hour out of it. You could have cut a half hour out of it, honestly, and that's one of the few times I actually say that with pretty good assurance that it's the right thing to say or the right thing to do. You could have lost a few bits and pieces here and there, but I did like that they tried to have more character development. They tried to have more of a more substance than just Diana runs around breaking shit and lassoing people and punching people and using her. They tried to give it a little bit more substance. And I appreciate that. And it's hard to do in a superhero film because you have inherent things that happen in superhero films. There's inherent, you just have to have them doing stuff. So it aspired, it swung for the fences or whatever. If we're going to use metaphors, it swung for the fences, but it didn't hit a home run, maybe, or it didn't stick the landing, like you said. But they tried, and they tried to do something. And it's better to try and fuck up a little bit and still do okay than not to try at all. So.
here's the here's the other big question. You know, she comes from a mythological age and an island full of magic and myths. So why in the hell would, even just joking, would she pick up the rumored magic wishing stone and make a wish? It's like, well, she should know better, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
So
it's one thing to. It's one
come
thing
on.
to. Yeah, I agree with you. It's one thing to. Yeah, but then because that's what the story wanted her to do, like you're always fond of saying.
No, I understand that, but
because
I'm
the
just
script
like,
that was at the point in the screenplay where she picked up the stone and said, "I wish the February
right,
alive."
because the script said she.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why. Because she was directed to, and action. So
Yeah.
because you couldn't have
But
you couldn't have had the rest of the story because she had to do it because she was.
yeah,
Like
and
you
that
said,
gets back to my thing.
pining
It's
away.
a story, and yes, and the characters are going to behave
Yeah.
in any particular narrative in the way that the story dictates that they need to. So.
Ideally, that would be because of their characters. But it just doesn't
Sure,
work that way.
sure.
But yeah, I agree with you. That's one of the many questions I had. As and all the things were happening, like the Kristen Wiig beating up her potential attacker, and there's all kinds of things going on. But yeah, again, not a waste of time. Certainly better than a lot of films I've seen recently, and I enjoyed it. It was fun at some points. It was a little strange at some points, and a little like, oh, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah,
And I'm sure that I watched something with a different, perspective than other people do. Some people, like
sure,
you and I watch something
me
with,
too.
I'm like, oh, why did they do that? That was a weird choice. But no, not everybody watches stuff like that. It's like, well, like, oh, I enjoy it. Wonder Woman's amazing. So anyway,
But I think you and I are both, have been around long enough, or have been in and out of the industry long enough to know that. I mean, I am under no illusion that they did not set out to make a bad movie. They did not set out to ruin the character or piss off fans.
No,
I think
they
just they went for what they wanted, and in this case, they didn't hit it for the most part, and that's okay. I mean, it's
okay because they're going to get another chance. So there you go.
Yes, exactly. But that it happens, and it doesn't mean that they hate fans or the characters.
No.
Just they tried something, it didn't work. Hopefully they'll do better next time. And a lot of times you don't know when you're making the movie until you get to the end that it's like, didn't quite go the way we wanted, but this is what we have now. Let's make it work.
You know who hates fans, man? Zack Snyder. That guy hates fans. Just kidding.
Oh, so see, I'm confused.
Are you confused?
I need
right.
Well, I need text on this because I never know in any given month whether we're supposed to hate Zack Snyder or love him and be behind him. I'm it's gone back and forth so many times.
I think
I don't understand anymore.
What people might be objecting to is the whole idea that here this guy gets another chance to do something when there's so many other people that don't get the first chance to do something. And granted, him leaving the movie was not his fault. Obviously, it was a horrible tragedy why he had to leave. But here's another.
But we pushed for that. So I mean, we went through Zack Snyder hates DC characters and he makes terrible movies, and then he got removed from Justice League, and it was how dare they?
No, he didn't get
how
removed.
dare they? Well, he left.
Yeah.
But it's like, how dare they have someone else come in and finish that movie? We want to see his version, and then it was like, well. Now we're going to get to see his version. It's like, we don't want to see that. That's terrible. Then it was like, it's going to be a 4-hour thing, and it's going to have nothing in it that Joss Whedon shot. This is great. We can't wait to see it. And then he used Hallelujah in his trailer. We hate him again. Then it was like, well, it's going to be a 4-hour series, and then we're going to put it together as a full movie at some point. We love him. It's great. And then it was like, now we're back to hating him again. I can't keep up. I don't understand.
Well, I maybe there's a point of fatigue. It's like, well, just show the thing already, I don't think people want to wait. I mean, it's coming, right? It's coming in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So at some point, people are just like, okay, they move on, right? And they got what they wanted.
Right.
They got their Snyder cut or whatever, and now they want to see it, and they want to move on to the next cause or whatever. And now they want what is it? I don't know, there's a new cut that people want. The air cut of Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad, yeah.
So, sure, why not? Let's do it. Let's give everybody a new cut of something.
We have a platform to do that on.
Yeah.
HBO Max, so why not?
Why not? Yeah, and it's great.
And I'm all for that.
I think that the bottom line is he didn't leave the project of his own free will, obviously, and he wasn't fired, and he would have stayed if he could, but he made the right choice for family reasons and personal reasons, and the fact that he's getting another chance to come back and complete his work, I guess, is a nice story, and it's nice. But
Yeah.
at some point, you have to stop. I don't know what the word is. You have to stop sort of teasing everybody and just deliver. You got to. It better be great too. By the way, at this
Yes.
point now, it
Yes.
better be fucking amazing. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it at all? And a lot of other things are riding on this too, because if he shows this thing and people are like, why do we care in the first place? Then it's going to ruin it for a lot of other people. I don't think Ayer's going to get his cut if Snyder fucks everything up. So
I don't think Ayer's going to get.
I don't think he's going to get a cut
right.
anyway. Yeah, I agree with you. But so there's a lot of expectations now that it better be fucking fantastic. And if it's not, then fanboys will hate it and love it and vilify him and extol his virtues. And that's why you can't get in arguments with people on Twitter. So there you go.
I'm just saying I need to be in the newsletter to know which month I like Zach or hate him.
Why don't you can make up your own mind about things like that. Just like you can make up your own mind about, and we're going to try to sandwich this in at the end, but what we were talking about, what we were going to talk about in this episode was things that we enjoyed from 2020, although we're kind of squeezing that in now and pressing for time a tiny bit, but that's okay.
Should we make that another episode?
Maybe we should, but I still think we can talk about it a little bit. I mean, it's
okay.
It's well, how much time have we spent? We're okay. It's fine.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so just for the sake of argument, 2020 was obviously shitty in many ways, but there were some positive things that happened, and some positive things and things that I enjoyed, and things that I'm sure you enjoyed. So, can you tell me a couple of examples of those things? Why don't you start with that?
Well, I mean, obviously the thing that I go on about, and I think I've done too many times on the show, I discovered a new hobby in 2020, which was great, 3D printing. I won't go off on it like I normally do.
That's okay.
But, 2020 was a weird year. And honestly, there's a lot of things from the beginning of the year to the mid part of the year. It's all kind of this haze and blur. I went through a lot of, not to delve in it too much, but depression issues, trying to sort out how I felt about things and what was going on in the world and stuff like that. So that part is kind of the part that I definitely want to move past and forget. But I learned a new hobby. I'm grateful that I got to spend a lot of time with my family, and we've really really bonded. Not that we weren't close before that, but we got into routines, and that's been great. But entertainment wise, a lot of the stuff that I was excited about and paid off for me kind of occurred in the latter half of the year, like The Expanse coming back. We got a name for Baby Yoda, which was fantastic on The Mandalorian. Star Trek Discovery coming back. At the end, well, I guess it was the beginning of this year. I got a new episode of Doctor Who finally. Tenet came out. I didn't see it until very recently, but to me also, I think the year was encapsulated by forced change, I guess would be the message there, and how well businesses and individuals and entertainment adapted to that. And to me, it was encouraging that there was an overwhelming number of entities, or whatever you want to call them, that said, listen, we want to continue to exist. We want to continue to give you product or food or whatever. We're going to rethink how to do this. So yeah, that was, it was a year. I don't know how more to describe it, but I think overall the positives and the things I enjoyed greatly outweighed the negatives. We lost a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, some online friends, some family members, things like that that seem to be, I mean, in any given year there are deaths obviously, but 2020 seemed to be heavy in that regard, more so than other years.
Well, so maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. I mean, it's obviously bad, but it wouldn't have, maybe because of all the other things that were also happening. So
sure,
it was a lot to process, but there were some positives for me too. I really feel like one of the nice things, if I can say it that way, was because of being quarantined and whatever and having to stay at home, I got to actually spend more time with my family, which was nice.
Yeah.
And I got to spend more time enjoying things like films or TV or whatever, and playing games, and interacting with people online sometimes. And I started going back to play like Dungeons and Dragons. I talk about that a lot. That was a huge thing for me in 2020, a huge positive, because obviously you can't sit at a table and play with anybody, but playing online with people, and talking to people, interacting with them on a weekly basis, even on Zoom or whatever, is still interaction, and it's still positive. And that game it's been very fun, and I'm still playing it, and I'm still enjoying it. And it was really quite fun. And doing the show was great to bring it back in
Yes.
2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw a lot of great shows on streaming services. I enjoyed a lot of good music, and but I think it was also like you have to find positive things to do when there's a lot of negativity going around, and it was easier maybe to find those things because there was more negativity in 2020 maybe than I've experienced in most of my life. And maybe that just makes me lucky, maybe it does, but
Yes.
there was a lot of great things. Like I enjoyed there's so many like really cool movies that I watched. Let's see, let me look at my list here. I have to look at my list. Well, like Enola Holmes is a thing I loved so much. Bill and Ted Face the
Yes.
Music was another really great positive thing. Ted Lasso, this TV show on Apple Plus, was a super great
Still
show.
haven't watched
You
that.
got to
I
watch
need
it,
to
man.
watch it.
It's so good and so like positive, and the way he deals with people. I'm never gonna stop talking about Ted Lasso. It's a great freaking show.
Okay.
And The
All right.
Queen's Gambit, great show.
Yeah.
And
Raised by Wolves.
Raised by Wolves, yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah.
great content, and that helped. And that's kind of, I think that one of the great things about people disparage the entertainment industry, and rightfully so, and for a lot of reasons. But even in the sort of darkest timeline, there's still these positive things that people get to do and watch and experience, and it takes them out of their funk or out of their reality for a while, and they can enjoy stuff like Wonder Woman in 1984. It was sort of silly, and like we talked about, it had problems, whatever. But for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I was not thinking about other bullshit.
Yes.
You know,
Exactly.
and that was great. And watching Queen's Gambit, I wasn't thinking about other bullshit. Or Enola Holmes, I wasn't thinking about other bullshit. And Ted Lasso, I was not thinking about other bullshit. And playing D&D for 2 or 3 hours a week, not thinking about other bullshit. And that's a big deal, especially in a year like 2020. And so
Yes.
I'm very grateful that all of this stuff exists. And I'm very grateful that people were able to create it, and then I was able to experience it. And it made the year more bearable. And again, I'm not saying, oh, poor me, because my life was so terrible. I had to stay home in my beautiful home, and with my great kid and my wife and everything, and that's terrible. My life is a misery. Yeah, it sucked to have to stay home, but I was able to stay home, and that's great and good for me.
Yes.
But there was still some stress, and I'm sure you would agree, because you had to stay home, but you also were working too. So I'm sure it was
Right.
nice for you to have some sort of respite as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the biggest takeaway for me for 2020 is it forced me in a way, but allowed me to hyper focus on the things that are important and the things closer to home, if you will. But I think that was not that I took my family or anything else for granted. It just made me really focus
Sure you
on that,
did.
and sure, but making home and the people around me, appreciate them and be the best that we can, because it was trying times, and I'm under no illusion that I suffered, mentally.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Physically, no. I mean, there was never going to be a time that I became, homeless and had to try to figure out where my family was going to live. So, let's set the bar there. So I'm certainly privileged. I'm certainly lucky, but mentally it was difficult. But like I said, it really let me look at the things that are immediate and important, and build those and make those better. And I appreciate it. And like you said, focus. I started binging last year Letterkenny. I'd always been wanting to watch that show. Fucking hilarious. It's a great show. I recommend it to anyone.
I've heard, and I've not had a chance to watch it, but
it's great. But there's a lot of other things like that, movies and TV shows that I'm like, I always wish I could watch those. It's like, I got some time, I can do that, and we've been doing that. So yeah. I mean, again, I don't want anyone to ever think poor Joe, because that's not
no.
remotely close. But I appreciate and am happy about the important things more so than I probably would have been, and I'm grateful to have had that experience and to kind of gone through what we went through. I mean, it's I've learned a lot. I'm sure we all have, but definitely learned a lot about myself, about the world. As we said, learned about politics way more than I probably ever wanted to know.
Yeah.
So I know everyone wants to. It's easy to focus on, I guess, the doom and gloom. But it really is kind of the old adage: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Kind of, really. Yeah, I mean, So
yeah, I'm just glad I didn't get COVID. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
and
here's the thing though. I was never tested, and there are times where I had physical things going on that make me wonder if at some point I had, I don't know, a mild. I never had a fever though, so I don't think I actually had COVID. I mean, It could have just been like a regular cold or flu. Or
there was
whatever,
some weird thing that I had, like, not to get into COVID too much, but there was some weird illness that I had, the middle of the year before, like middle of 2019, towards the end, that was like, they couldn't figure out what it was. It was affecting my lungs, and I had a fever, and I had chills, and I had the whole thing. For like 2 weeks, I was like totally sidelined with weakness and whatever. And I often wonder now, especially if that was some sort of COVID thing or whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah, it could have totally been.
I have no idea, but it was way before it was ever reported. So I don't know, but I don't want to I don't want to end it on a negative note. So let's keep it positive and not talk about, it's a new year, right? It's a new, potentially a new start for the country, a new start for us, a new start for everybody. So let's just say 2021, we're looking forward to, more entertainment things, more fun, more movies and TV and video. The Snyder Cut and video games that we get to play or whatever. And you can 3D print some more shit. And, looking forward to my son going back to school eventually. Just slip that in there. I want to have a positive outlook, and I want to say that, that I feel optimistic about the future because, you have to a little bit. I never thought about the future much, but now you kind of have to, especially if you have a family.
Yeah.
So I choose to be optimistic, and I choose to think that there are positive things coming, in all areas, but, in entertainment for sure. We're going to get a lot of cool stuff this year. And I'm looking forward to all of it. So hopefully you are too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. I think, the other thing out of 2020 is being isolated. Ironically, I've become closer to a lot of people that I virtually know on the internet. And so it's strengthened. I can't say that word. It increased friendships. And bonds
words
with
are
people.
hard.
I know, and I'm very grateful from that. And I think going forward in 2021, good things will come for that. I still, we've done the podcast, and I have a new hobby and stuff like that, and I still am having difficulty really reigniting my creative spark because I really, really want to get back to writing. And I'm having a hard time doing that, so I don't know what to do about that. But that's I'm still working on.
If you have any ideas, send them to Joe.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Speaking
you
of,
can all be my therapist.
Speaking of that, I should say before we wrap it up, I should say that we're going to be doing some new things in 2021 for the show. I mean, we have a Patreon, as you know, but we're also going to try to expand maybe discussion with audience members and fans, if we have any, or fan, I should say. Because we're gonna do our Discord server, so look for that. Look for information about that pretty soon, and then of course you can find us on the socials on Facebook and on Twitter at TheFlickcast, and you can find Joe and I on Twitter if you want to listen to my rants about stuff and
We're
Joe's.
still not banned.
And
Yay.
yeah, still not banned, and all that stuff. And you can find our Patreon, of course, if you look for it. It's patreon.com/TheFlickcast. But and we really appreciate everybody listening to the show and supporting the show. And if you want to go to Apple Podcasts, for example, and leave a review or just a rating, that would be awesome. We'd appreciate all that. Please do, and hopefully a nice one. Although if you generally hate the show, then certainly say that too.
Yeah, let us know. Cause
any feedback is appreciated.
Right. We'll listen to that.
Although I would imagine if you've listened this far, you probably don't hate the show. You're not hate listening, right? So hopefully not anyway.
Is that a thing? That would be funny if we had people that like hate
I don't know. These guys are assholes. I want to listen to everything they say. Yeah, I don't think that happens.
Yeah.
I feel like people would turn it off in the first 2 seconds if they didn't like something. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't understand people, and I probably never will. That's one thing I'm going to try to do more in 2021 also is try to understand people. So that'll be my personal journey.
Yeah, I know it's trite to say, but that's kind of the thing I'm striving to do is understand people more. And, maybe from time to time just being a little kinder,
Yeah, that's it. That's a good mantra for 2021 too. Be more kind. Be kinder. So
yes.
All right. So for Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, everybody.